Welcome, everyone.
Welcome to session
52.
52. We're right in the middle, actually past the middle of a long letter, but a very important letter, the God letter. If you haven't watched sessions 50 and 51, we suggest that you go back and watch both of those, and especially 51, because we're going to pick up in the middle of that topic, which is evil. What constitutes evil and how you can avoid it and how you are not able to avoid it and by whom it is perpetrated. Let's cover just a little bit, just a little recap, because the first part of those two sessions, all of session 50 and part of session 51, were concerned with their views of God versus those in the Christian world, since that's where these two Englishmen are from, the Western Christian world. So let's discuss some of the differences just briefly to bring us up to date. Paul was a little surprised to find that the two Mahatmas that we're dealing with here were both Tibetan Buddhists by religion and also lamas. Now, a lama generally is a monk, but it actually means a teacher. They don't always wear the saffron robe. I assume they do, especially during ceremonies, but when they travel or interact with Westerners, they apparently didn't always wear their monk robes. So, just for your information, they were comparing the normal Christian ways of looking at God with their own. And they said that the Christians believe that much of what God does is supernatural. They say there is nothing that is supernatural, because supernatural says it's not natural. It's not anything nature would ever do. Well, nature does it, so it's not supernatural, it's natural. So anything in nature that actually occurs is natural.
Wouldn't a better word be metaphysical? I think it's just semantics, but I understand what they mean.
Metaphysical actually means something. That means above the physical. It can still be matter.
Well, everything is matter.
Everything is matter. That's the point.
Again, it's semantics, but what is meant is something that you can't see with your five normal senses.
Right. So if you say superphysical, yeah, you can say that. Metaphysical,
but again,
superphysical.
physical, we're assigning the word physical to what we can detect with the five senses in the physical plane, but
yeah,
just playing with words here.
And it's important to be clear in our thoughts and how we express those thoughts. If you do, you have a better chance of other people being able to do the same thing and perceive clearly what you're saying.
Right.
They teach what they know versus believing in things that can't be verified. So belief versus knowledge. It's a huge difference. A professor at a university doesn't teach stuff that he hasn't proved for himself. Sometimes in a lab, sometimes in everyday life, but it's always things that they have investigated, observed, and on which they have made conclusions. And they get it verified by their colleagues. They have support. Religions, on the other hand, believe in writings that are 2,000 years old, more, and we have no idea who actually wrote those things. Somebody along the way decided, oh, this is legitimate, that is not, and it's completely belief. Belief generally is an emotion. For many people, they inherit their religion, and they're delighted to find out that the religion that they inherited just happens to be the one true religion. Isn't that amazing how lucky people are? Mahatmas don't believe anything like that at all. They are more like scientists. They are occult scientists. They investigate, they prove it for themselves. They have been trained for lifetimes, many lifetimes, and they know of what they speak. He said that their knowledge is limited to our solar system, meaning not just the Earth, but other planets. So they know what goes on in our solar system and the whys and the wherefores of it. And he said, although we aren't professionals when it comes to intergalactic space or interstellar space even, we assume that the laws of nature don't break down all of a sudden once we get past our own solar system. But the most important part is that they know what they're talking about. And if they don't know something, they will tell us. They don't make up something because somebody told them and they believe it. The Christians believe in one supreme God who makes all the rules, including the laws of nature. Think about that. It's almost like a programmer writing a program for a video game. Let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm creating this universe. I think we need to have gravity, so let's see, how would gravity work? And they introduce that aspect into it. Well, what else do we need? How about some different living creatures? It boggles the mind. Where would this God get all of these ideas if it was created only one time? If the universe was created who knows when, but one person, one individual came up with all these ideas, including all the rules that regulate it. But here's the crazy thing. Why would this God say, and those people who don't believe that I'm God, I'm going to punish them? Why would he do that? That to me doesn't sound like a very kind person. But supposedly this supreme being who created everything decided that these people, if they didn't follow what he told them and didn't believe in him, would be punished forever. They get one chance. One chance, and it might be 15 years or 20 years or 100 years, but that's it. One chance, and they will spend all of eternity based on what they did during that one lifetime, versus the belief that we have every possible chance to redeem ourselves. So in the Christian concept, God gave them an out. He says, you don't have to learn everything in one lifetime. But here's the kicker. If you believe in my son, who's going to take on all of your sins and pay for them himself, you get a free pass. Forget about all of your victims, the people you murdered, or all of the thefts you committed, or robberies, or rape, or how many people's lives you upended or destroyed. Forget about that. I'll still give you a pass. And in the version of the Mahatmas, you get all the chances you need to finally choose one way or the other, the left-hand path that leads to death and destruction, or the right-hand path that leads to nirvana and eternal life. So very stark differences. There's a funny thing I read just recently. HPB was writing to her relatives in Odessa about what she was learning, and it was just 2 years after they had founded the TS, and she made a comment and said, if the Jehovah of the Old Testament came and applied for membership in the TS, he would not be accepted.
That's pretty funny. She had a good sense of humor.
Oh, she was excellent. And
oh my gosh.
Having a good sense of humor is everything. The two Mahatmas have a very good sense of humor. And like we've said before, the only upsets they have in life are caused by trying to help human beings. Otherwise, they are zen, they are chill. Everything is copacetic. But it's the humans that they have to work with that cause problems. This whole situation of whether or not you believe in this Jehovah-type God or Christian-type God was investigated by a Frenchman, a philosopher and a theologian named Blaise Pascal. He lived from 1623 to 1662. You've probably heard of Pascal's wager. Being a philosopher, he thought, well, this belief in God seems to be pretty intense, so we need to investigate this. Since there's no way to prove one way or the other that this God exists, let's take a look at it from a betting perspective. If you're going to wager something, you want to know what your odds are. Poker players know the odds that they're up against.
Yeah.
So he said, all things considered, it's much safer to believe in God. So here's the thing. If you believe in God, then when you die, you're going to inherit eternal life and this wonderful, beautiful eternity. If you don't believe in God, you're either going to go to hell and burn forever, or if God doesn't exist, you don't lose anything and you don't win anything. You're just the same. Whereas the person who believes in God and it turns out God doesn't exist is in the same boat. Doesn't win anything, doesn't lose anything. He does lose something, though, peace of mind. His entire life, he was worried about, am I going to be found worthy at the end of my life? Am I going to make a mistake and burn in hell? So, yes, he does have a cost, but Pascal didn't recognize that.
That wager would apply also to if a different God existed instead of the one that you choose to believe in.
And we have a quote, very famous, that has been attributed to Marcus Aurelius. Whether or not he actually said that is in dispute, but the words make a lot of sense. So I'm going to have Paul read what Marcus Aurelius supposedly said.
Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you've been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods, but unjust, then you should not want to worship them.
Yes. Think about the Christian heaven where you will supposedly live with God. Well, if it's the God that murdered people who didn't believe in him, I don't want to spend eternity with that being. I don't know about you. And as we've said before, if you are kind and compassionate and care about people, if you believe that we are all one and all interconnected, what do you have to worry about? Are you telling me that your God would send me to hell because I don't believe the way you do? The Mahatmas believe in karma. As you sow, so shall ye reap. Even Jesus said that. As you sow, so shall you reap. But the difference is, in Christianity, you don't have to pay for that as long as you believe in Jesus.
I was going to bring that up when we were talking about the one chance that we get. If you do truly believe, yes, I believe in your son, as you asked me to, and that he's taking on all of our sins. I truly do believe, and then you get that pass. But I was going to bring up, I knew we were going to cover it though, what about all the stuff? Like all the stuff you did? Is there no recompense or retribution, atonement, anything that goes on?
No, those victims have to also plead for mercy because let go of it. I can forgive you for not pardoning him, but you have to say you believe also. It's kind of a messed up process no matter what.
We don't want to force any opinions or anything on anyone. We just ask that you think about that for a moment. Just think about this. Just think about the process of that. Just use your clear vision, your clarity of discernment, and see the process of that.
So the Christians say that you don't necessarily have to be responsible for your bad actions. The Mahatmas say you are going to be responsible either in this lifetime or a future lifetime. Now, we know already that the real human is not this physical personality. It's our higher self. So it's the higher self that will be punished in that next incarnation.
Well, the physical personality will also receive discomfort.
Yes. Yes, it's going to be on both parts. But no one can take on your karma. That's what they say. You alone are responsible for that.
Or else it wouldn't be karma. We hear this a lot in different spiritual circles, that there are ways, and almost like magic or different rituals or practices to do to either transfer karma or eliminate it.
The purple karma eraser. Yeah,
It wouldn't be karma. Karma is, as you sow, so shall you reap. If you can get rid of it by believing in something or saying something or chanting something or going to a building every Sunday and saying some words with a bunch of people in a particular building, they wouldn't be karma then. It wouldn't be as you sow, so shall you reap. It would be as you sow, I'll tell you how to fix it later. That would be as you sow, we'll fix it later. Wink, wink.
yeah.
It wouldn't be karma. And then there would be no lessons. Karma is the biggest teacher in the universe.
Think about the mafia dons, these huge, corrupt criminal organizations. Anybody who crosses them gets offed. And then they go to the priest the next Saturday, get forgiven, and the priest isn't allowed to tell anybody what was confessed to him.
Do they actually have like legal immunity though? Like,
Yes, they do.
Like they couldn't be subpoenaed. A priest probably, huh?
Right.
That's
and
interesting.
it's because these countries recognize the sanctity of confession.
Wow.
So, no, they are not allowed to or required to, unless there are some states where they are beginning to hold them accountable. So it invalidates the privilege of being able to tell your priest something, but that's few and far between.
Terry, I don't know if we should mention Pascal's wager. At first glance, it sounds like an argument for religion. This is why you should be a Christian or be a religious person, because it's safer to believe in God.
That's exactly it. Because if the alternative is eternal punishment, no one wants to take a chance on that.
And then an opposing view would be what Marcus Aurelius said. Just be a good person. If God is just, he doesn't give a crap how many days you go to church and repent. If you were a good person, that's what determines if you're going to get through the pearly gates, if there are any or not.
Here's another crazy thing. There obviously were arguments at some point in the past where someone said, but I've been a good person my entire life. I can't think of any sins that I've committed. Oh, well, there's an out, though. You've got original sin. You know what original sin is?
It's the silliest thing. You're born as a sinner in the physical flesh, but I don't know why or how. I don't understand how it works. But the point is, when you're born, you're a sinner.
Adam and Eve. You're responsible for some sin that was committed 6,000 years ago. So even if you live a perfect life, no, you don't get a pass. You are a sinner, and you have to believe in this God who's going to give you the way out.
Again, just think about that. Think about the concept of original sin, and if that makes sense to you.
Either you use belief and emotions to establish your beliefs, or you use logic. What makes sense? And you use an introspection of yourself, your heart. Who am I? Am I a good person? If not, let me change that. And that's what karma is all about. It's not about punishing people who don't believe a certain way or rewarding people who do believe a certain way. It's about getting people who are out of alignment with nature back into alignment. Nothing more than that. Nature's plan is evolution, growing in consciousness, awareness, and that's it. It's very simple. But if you do anything that harms someone else's ability to do that and to learn their lessons, then you are out of tune. You're out of sync with nature.
And that's how we're defining evil.
And that's it. So evil is being out of tune with nature. Very, very simple. And people will say, well, nature doesn't have a rule against murder. Yes, it does. Karma adjusts that. The person who commits murder will be punished and will be required to learn the lesson that murder doesn't help you or anyone else. Even if it gave you $12 million by committing this murder, it's not going to be worth that because you committed murder against yourself.
This is such an amazing concept. And whenever Terry and I broach this topic, it could go in many directions and it could be like an entire course just on this. The question might be arising in your mind, sometimes we talk about the Bhagavad Gita a lot, and sometimes we reference, is it ever appropriate to, for example, kill an animal to eat meat, or is it ever appropriate to tell a lie, even if it might save the life of an innocent person? Or referencing the Bhagavad Gita like I did, is Arjuna supposed to go to war against his family and commit atrocities because it's his duty, which the Lord is telling him that he needs to do? Is it ever actually appropriate? It depends on the context, but you never, like what Terry is saying, you never escape the repercussions. Even if it is your duty to do something, even if you're in a situation where you have to act in a way that might seem against nature to do what everyone could agree is the right thing, there will still be karma. There'll still be a consequence. It'll be different though, because motivation matters. But there's never an out for karma. It's physics. It's basic physics. You do something, you get a repercussion from it.
Another thing to keep in mind is how your beliefs affect other people. When you're a child, like I mentioned, if you're taught a religion, you think you're very lucky because you were one of those who was in the one true religion. Whether it's Hinduism or different branches of Christianity. They don't even agree that other Christian churches have the truth, but we do. So we inflict these views and these beliefs on our children. So they have nothing else to go on. They're going to believe whatever you teach them, most likely. I happen to be very skeptical even as a child, so I was an exception, but most people are not. They have complete faith in what they're told by their parents. My mom wrote in her diary, when I was 5 years old, I was trying to understand the story of Adam and Eve. And she said, Terry keeps pestering me about that story. He can't understand why she ate the apple. And I still can't, even today. So yeah, I was skeptical even at 5 years old. But let's not instill these terrors, these fears in our children. If you don't do what we tell you to, you're going to go to hell. You're going to burn forever. And think of the parents, too. They spend their entire life worrying, oh, my God, my son, my daughter is a non-believer. They're not going to be with me after I die. They're not going to be in heaven, and they're going to be suffering. What kind of heaven would that be? Now, here's something very interesting that isn't pointed out in the Mahatma Letters, but is pointed out in HPB's book, Key to Theosophy. And that is, whatever people firmly actually believe will happen after death happens. In other words, if a devout Mormon believes that he or she is going to be in the celestial kingdom, during the Devachan, they will spend, in their mind, eternity doing the same rituals in the temple that they've been doing their entire life, saving dead people. They won't know that they're dead, but they will still be thinking that they're saving dead people, giving them an opportunity to be saved. They will be with their children, but only the ones who believe the same way. So take, on the other hand, a materialist who's dead set, completely convinced that at the end of life, boom, end of consciousness, existence for me as an individual, that's it, lights out, nothing more. Guess what he's going to experience during Devachan? Lights out, nothing. Think about that. And in between, if you are a Buddhist, you will have the degrees of glory of Buddhism. But Buddhism teaches only that the very, very wicked who had every opportunity during 777 or more lifetimes will end up losing their soul. That's a very different concept. All right, that's probably enough excitement for just a review. I wanted to say one more thing about the Phari-Jong Monastery. I didn't think to bring out that this monastery, and we'll show the visual of the location and of the monastery. The only photo or photos that I could find of the monastery were taken in 1903 by what is called the Younghusband expedition. Now, Younghusband wasn't a bunch of young husbands that went on an expedition. It was a man whose last name was Younghusband. Who was,
gosh.
Yeah, strange last name. Well, all one word.
Oh, gosh.
Who led this English expedition, and it was very similar to what happened in Egypt in 1881, where the British went into a foreign country and tried to create trouble and have a reason to take over their government. So he did the same thing with Tibet. He had, I don't remember how many men, but he led an expedition that was on a mission to subjugate Tibet to England in order to gain control, because they were convinced that the Russians were trying to do the same thing or planning to. So let's take it over first so the Russians don't get it. And the Tibetans, who are a very peaceful people, only had very primitive weapons. They had some kind of guns, but they were nothing like what the British had, and they weren't trained. They tried to defend themselves, and the British just mowed them down. And in one case, there were 300 or 400 of them that came towards them, and when they realized they were overpowered, they turned around and were fleeing. And the soldiers were ordered to shoot them in the back, to kill them. And one of the persons who was involved in that and wrote about it said that it made him absolutely sick to kill people who were trying to run away. So one more evidence of the atrocity that was committed during this time period. The monastery, by the way, is at 14,100 feet, 4,300 meters high, and there's no vegetation at all. It's just flat plain.
It's a plain. It's not a mountain.
Well, it would be, but where the monastery is flat, basically. It's not perched on a high hill like the ones that we saw.
Wow, 14,000.
Very barren. So there's one photo online where all of these British tents are pitched, and this battle that I'm talking about didn't necessarily take place right at that location, but that was the purpose of this expedition. After that long introduction, let's continue with the final section of letter number 88. We've been talking about evil, and we learned last time that the perpetrators of evil are not plants, not rocks, not animals, and not Mahatmas or anyone above them. It's yours truly, human beings. We're the anomaly in nature. We're the ones who feel we're special, that my rights, not only do I have these rights as an individual, but my rights are bigger than your rights. We are the most separated from nature of all nature's creations.
There's more. We choose evil, or we don't. There's no devil that's making us do it. The devil didn't make you do it. What we're saying here is there's no ultimate evil. And that goes to say, too, that what's the other? There's no ultimate, right? This whole letter is about the God letter. So God and the devil are usually diametrically opposed in most religions. We're saying flat out here that there's no devil. We can be the devil if we make those choices. We can also be God.
He also said that if you live in tune with nature, then you do everything. All of your actions, all of your thoughts will be in tune with this idea that all is one. I will do nothing that would harm any other individual because that is me. And if you live that way and you understand how nature works, you will die a natural death at the end, except if there's a true accident. That does happen sometimes, and you will be recompensed for that in case that does occur. But there is no illness, no suffering. You want to know how to eliminate suffering? Live a good life in tune with nature. That's it. In one sentence, live a good life in tune with nature, not harming animals, people, your planet that you live in. And he mentioned 3 things specifically: food, drink, and sexual relations, all natural. But in excess, or when it harms someone else or harms yourself, then that's not natural. So all suffering comes from not living in tune with nature. As I mentioned in the last session, if we find the cure for an illness, people say, oh, good, we are done with that one. And then guess what? Nature comes up with a new one.
It mutates
Constantly. So as long as we are out of tune with nature, nature will continue to find a way to try to move us back onto the path. And we are convinced that we can somehow get away with it if we just find that magic potion. All right, let's continue the letter.
I'm going to start a couple sentences prior just so we can have the context.
Good.
Become a glutton, a pervert, a tyrant, and you become the originator of diseases, of human suffering and misery. It is neither nature nor an imaginary deity that has to be blamed, like we were saying, the devil, but human nature made vile by selfishness. Wow. Think over these few words well. Work out every cause of evil you can think of, and trace it to its origin, and you will have solved 1/3 of the problem of evil.
1/3, 33%.
That's interesting.
So
It's a good exercise to do. Trace back every cause of evil.
And we can do that. Not in every case, because you would have to be able to see into previous lifetimes. But there's enough information when you get to be my age that you can look back in your life. I do this quite often. Review everything that happened at different stages in life. I didn't understand at the time what was going on, but I do now. I understand why I had to have certain experiences. It all becomes clear, but only because I'm not attached to them. I don't have any expectations or belief that that should never have happened. That's just not right, because I should suffer for that. I had plenty of things that caused me to suffer, but I recognized that in every case it was me.
And now, after making due allowance for evils that are natural and cannot be avoided, and so few are they that I challenge the whole host of Western metaphysicians to call them evils or to trace them directly to an independent cause, I will point out the greatest, the chief cause of nearly 2/3 of the evils that have pursued humanity ever since that cause became a power. Oh gosh.
What is that one
I know what's coming.
cause that caused 2/3 of the evil in the world?
I know what's coming. You ready for a bomb, y'all? Buckle your seatbelt. It is religion, under whatever form and in whatever nation. It is the sacerdotal caste, the priesthood and the churches. It is in those illusions that man looks upon as sacred, that he has to search for the source of that multitude of evils, which is the great curse of humanity and that almost overwhelms mankind. Wow. They are Buddhists, which is a religion, That religion, I can't think of how that religion has ever caused any wars or any evils, but they are part of a religion.
Some of the Buddhist countries are not like the Tibetan Buddhists. For example, Myanmar has tremendous upheavals, and that's a Buddhist country.
Well, it's interesting.
So there are a few outliers. People will find an excuse to commit atrocities if they want to.
Of course.
So
of course.
even those who claim to be good Christians, yeah. Look at the Catholic Church itself. The Inquisition, the number of people who were murdered. If you want to know about the atrocities, look up the history of the Cathars in southern France. That is a horrible story where the person wrote back a letter to the Pope and said, "Today I put to the sword 20,000 men, women, and children who didn't believe, non-believers." So just because of their difference in beliefs, his soldiers killed 20,000 people. That was just one incident. These attacks went on for about 100 years or so, I believe.
This section is very, very powerful. The next sentence specifically: ignorance created gods, and cunning took advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, that is a memorable sentence. Ignorance created the gods out of fear because of natural occurrences that they couldn't explain, and cunning men took advantage of it.
And monetized it.
Yes. It's like, oh, you know what? Let's make some sacrifices. Give me some money. I'll be your priest.
Wow.
We'll appease the gods, and that won't happen again. And if it does happen, well, somebody didn't follow the rules.
Look at India and look at Christendom and Islam and Judaism and fetishism.
And fetishism is any belief in an idol of sorts, something material that you worship.
It is priestly imposture that rendered these gods so terrible to man. It is religion that makes of him the selfish bigot, the fanatic that hates all mankind outside his own sect, without making him any better or more moral for it. It is belief in God and gods that makes 2/3 of humanity the slaves of a handful of those who deceive them under the false pretense of saving them. Wow.
Now, this was in 1882, when the vast majority of people were ultra-religious, or at least moderately religious. Today, that is changing, but in less developed countries, they probably still believe in gods more than in the Western world, where we believe in material goods more than we do in spiritual goods.
Isn't man always ready to commit any kind of evil if told that his god or gods demand the crime? Voluntary victim of an illusionary god, the abject slave of his crafty ministers, the Irish, Italian, and Slavonian peasant will starve himself and see his family starving and naked to feed and clothe his padre and pope. Wow.
This is another difference between the Tibetan Buddhist lamas and the Christian hierarchy. They don't live in these elaborate, luxurious palaces. They don't have billions of dollars worth of property and artwork. They live very, very simple lives, just like the rest of their monks do. And they don't seek attention. People don't even know who they are. There is no ego. There is no climbing up in the hierarchy by knocking someone else out and eliminating them from the competition. These religions do all of that. It's more of a corporate, materialistic structure than a spiritual structure. Religious it is, yes, it's very religious. Spiritual, not so much.
For 2,000 years, India groaned under the weight of caste. Brahmins alone feeding on the fat of the land, and today the followers of Christ and those of Muhammad are cutting each other's throats in the name of and for the greater glory of their respective myths.
Myths, yeah.
Jeez.
Stories. No one knows who wrote them, but we still believe them.
We think we know who wrote them. We think we have the disciples and whoever else. But who knows?
who knows how real they are? And as we've mentioned before, the story of Jesus started out very simple, and then each writer added more stuff onto it. He wasn't the Son of God at first. He didn't redeem people's sins at first. All of this got added along the way. Research the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Prior to that, there were all of these Christian factions, including the Gnostics. If you want to have a better picture of what Christianity was originally, Gnosticism is probably the closest available. And even then, it's hit and miss as to whether or not you're getting a full picture of what Jesus taught and what his intentions were. In 325 AD, there was a council called by not a religious figure, but the emperor of the Roman Empire, Constantine. And he said, all of you Christian churches need to get your act together and decide on one thing. Can't we all just get along? So he called this council and presided over it. Not a spiritual person, but the leader of an empire.
325 years after Jesus was born.
Yeah.
They got together and decided what was going to be in the Bible, basically.
Right, including the Nicene Creed that every Catholic repeats every single Sunday. We believe in one God, this, and that Jesus died for our sins. This is what was determined in that council in 325 AD. And it wasn't unanimous. It was like fighting amongst themselves. And some left and said, yeah, we're not going along with the rest of you. And the others capitulated and
obviously none of them were around when Jesus was teaching.
No.
300 years later.
Absolutely not. So, yeah, these are how many generations removed? About 8 or 9 generations removed
Even
from
today,
that.
If we look back 300 years to the 1600s, 1700s.
Yeah.
We have a lot of information, but how accurate is it and how reliable is it? It's pretty decent, but think about back then, 2,000 years ago, how accurate was what they even had about Jesus's actual teachings, and then take that information and then decide what is going to be included and not. So it's like several times it's not even as accurate as it might be.
So one of the things that they decided too was even which books were going to be considered part of the Bible. And that was a huge discrepancy. So what esoteric Christianity is very difficult to establish. Esoteric Buddhism is much more defined and much better researched and much better recorded from historical documents.
I know that we're taking a lot of side trails and rabbit holes and things. I want to mention the fact that we value the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali a lot, and that's an ancient text. And we believe that Patanjali put that together in perhaps 200 BC, but some people say it was after Christ and some say it was much earlier. We don't know. I like to think of who's going to challenge what we're saying and why, because I want to be open-minded. So you might be thinking, well, you guys kind of revere the Yoga Sutras as truth. And it's not at all the same, because the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is 196 sentences of ways to eliminate suffering in your life. He doesn't say anything about going to hell if you don't do it. He doesn't say anything about going to heaven if you believe this or not. These are suggestions to make your life a little bit easier, to create peace, and to connect with your soul if you believe in that. To me, that's totally different. And even if it's all fake, if you test it and it works for your life, it's not fake. It works. It's real.
Yeah.
It's totally different, I think.
And the peoples of India were very advanced at the time. They were much, much better at record keeping than the people in the Middle East. As we learned a couple of sessions back, the oldest version of the Hebrew Old Testament is only 1,000 years old. So that's not a very good record. These people in that area of the world weren't the greatest record keepers. And that makes it way more difficult to establish what is correct and what is not.
This last sentence of this paragraph is another bomb drop here. This whole paragraph is just so powerfully juicy with these insights. Remember, the sum of human misery will never be diminished until that day when the better portion of humanity destroys the altars of their false gods in the name of truth, morality, and universal charity.
Yeah. You don't need religion. You don't need a God in order to be saved. In fact, that's not going to help you at all. Some of the most evil people I know are ultra-religious. But you can be a good person with no belief whatsoever just because you believe that harming someone else is not right. It's not difficult.
That's morality. He says in the name of truth. Well, everyone believes that they have the truth.
Yes.
Kind of wish he wouldn't say that there, because they might say, oh, well, you think your truth is truth. I think my truth is truth. But let's focus on the morality aspect. What Terry's saying right now, be a good person.
Right. And if you do that, that will lead you to the truth, because you don't have all of these prejudgments or filters that we put in front of us. Emotions, all of these filters make the water murky. You can't see. Like we said once before, when you're diving in Lake Mead, you go down 60 feet, you can't see anything. You can't see your hand in front of your face. This is what you're doing when you have all of these preconceptions and beliefs and are not willing to look at things the way they are.
Well, it seems like that might be a path for you. If you like the rules and the doctrine and dogma, that might be your path. Maybe religion, you might need. We would say, look at your food, drink, and sexual relations. Look at how honest you are. Look at your routines, your daily habits, your disciplines. Look at how in sync with the natural cycles of day and night, seasons, family, humanity that you are or you aren't. Look at those things. We think those are better gauges of living a good life than all of the doctrine and dogma that creates this, we think is murky, this thing. It's not that complicated.
And every mistake we make is a learning opportunity. We need to examine the areas of our life that cause pain and suffering, and then look back. And quite often you can trace exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Very simple, for example. You're in a situation where there's something upsetting. You're on a plane, somebody's got a child that just screams its head off, and the people are reacting and getting angry about it. If there's something you can do, do it. But if you can't stop it, then just accept it and be at peace with it.
This is the Dalai Lama's famous quote. What's his quote about that?
Well, he was talking about the aftermath of an earthquake in Tibet where quite a few Tibetans were killed. And he said the same thing. If you can do something to help, do it. If you can't, worrying about it or fretting about it is not going to help.
It certainly doesn't fix it.
No, and the people who did react, guess what? By the time they got to their destination, they're like this because of their reaction. If you learn not to react, you might be a little bit affected by it, but not nearly as much as those who got angry about it.
Controlling your breath and practicing methods in yoga helps with that. Reaction comes from a nervous system that's very fragile and overstimulated or fearful, or the food, drink, and sexual relations are in excess, as KH says right here. When I gave a presentation to 400 business owners at the last LaTip convention last year at the Tuscany Hotel, I'm the only yoga teacher in the entire 4,000 person LaTip network, by the way, in the entire country. I'm the only one. And Summer, the president, asked me to stand up and talk about the benefits of yoga to everyone who owns small businesses. Yoga is the farthest thing for most of their minds, but I focused on the power of controlling the breath, because the mind and emotions will follow the breath if you learn to be vigilantly aware of your breath and slow it down. And after I gave my talk, it was only 20 minutes, but it was in front of 400 people. I had countless people come up to me, former paramedics, former military people, first responders of all kinds, saying, the breathing you told us about this, count 4 seconds when you inhale and 4 seconds when you exhale, that's exactly what they tell us in first responder training on how to stay calm in the midst of chaos. Simple, practical. How do you not react? Breathe in for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds. Do that a few times. Your nervous system will respond, and you'll be less reactive, and you'll be more able to get to the site of the trauma and help, like the Dalai Lama said. And it's brilliant, these practical things that yoga offers. That's from the Yoga Sutras, by the way. Control the breath, and then you'll be more calm.
Remember one thing that the Mahatma said at the end of his instructions to these two Englishmen. He said, any religion that has the truth should have the solution to every human problem.
Wow.
So ask yourself if your belief system has the solution for every single human problem.
Let's continue. If it is objected that we too have temples, we too have priests, and that our lamas also live on charity, let them know that what these objects have in common with their Western equivalents is only the name. So he's saying, yes, our religion, we do have temples, priests, and lamas. Okay, but they are the same as what you think, only in their name. Thus, in our temples, neither a god nor gods are worshipped. Only the thrice sacred memory of the greatest and the holiest man that ever lived. Thrice sacred.
They often use thrice as supreme.
And this is probably Siddhartha Gautama, who became the first Buddha from Earth.
Right.
Of our humanity.
Okay, that's cool.
Jesus, the Christ, is right there with him. In fact, the Christ is still very much connected with everyday life on the planet. The Buddha has, even by most exoteric Buddhists, been relegated or has advanced to more of an overall position and only partly involved with earth events.
The Christ is not connected with Christianity, is he?
Of course, all of the members of the hierarchy work with whichever people they can.
But the religion, the name the Christ, we've mentioned before, is a level of consciousness. It's not the Christian religion.
Let's put it this way. If the Christ came back to earth today, the vast majority of Christians would not recognize him, because they have expectations of what he would be like, and it would conform to their own ideas. So that can't possibly be the Christ. What they do, all members of the hierarchy, including the Mahatmas, is they send influences to people who have a lot of influence over other people. And those are the ones who can change things more drastically than just one person who is studying at home and doesn't have any reach to speak of. So yes, those people, they will always try to send uplifting influence and even ideas and thoughts that hopefully they will pick up on. Most of the time they don't, I'm quite sure. But once in a while, they will pick up on those. And the kinder ones, the ones who are more in tune with nature, are far more apt to be the ones who are receptive to that. So yes, the Christ is still trying to influence even people high up in the Christian church, but whether or not much of it gets through, we don't know.
If our lamas, to honor the fraternity of the bhikshus.
The bhikshus are the monks who are not lamas. The lamas are the teachers, but it's all of the other monks that they teach.
Established by our blessed master himself. He's speaking about Siddhartha?
Yep, Gautama.
Go out to be fed by the laity, the latter often to the number of 5,000 to 25,000, are fed and taken care of by the Sangha, the fraternity of Lamaic monks, The Monastery providing for the wants of the poor, the sick, the afflicted.
Yeah, so they don't have huge reserves of billions of dollars like some churches do, sitting on a hoard of money. I can think of one particular church that isn't that large that has hundreds of billions of dollars worth of property and for-profit businesses and investments on the stock market, and they're sitting on it. All of this money, why? Because Jesus may come back any time and he's going to need cash. He's got a big operation to set up and he needs cash. That sounds a little weird to me.
Mm-hmm. It does. Our lamas accept food, but never money. And it is in those temples that the origin of evil is preached and impressed upon the people.
Yeah. You show me any missionary that won't accept money. They go out and they will accept food, something to continue their life and give them strength to do their work. But money, they are not allowed to touch. They don't ask for money.
There they are taught the Four Noble Truths, Arya Saka, and the Chain of Causation, the 12 Nidanas, and gives them a solution to the problem of the origin and destruction of suffering.
Yeah. So when we talk about the end goal of this path, or intermediate goal, I guess I should say, is to help bless and save humanity, it isn't by vicarious atonement. No one can do that. It is by teaching them the truth. Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths about suffering. It exists. Yes, it does. There is a way to eliminate suffering, and this is how you do it. And that was through the Eightfold Path. Right thinking, right memory, right means of livelihood, right meditation. All of these things, if you get yourself in tune with nature, suffering.
And this is the practical aspect of the philosophy that we think is very, very valid and very appropriate. Let's do something practical. Make your life better. It's not that complicated.
It's not through capitalism that you will have a good life. It's through following these precepts.
Read the Mahavagga and try to understand what the fully enlightened one says in the first Khandaka, not with the prejudiced Western mind, but with the spirit of intuition and truth. Allow me to translate it for you.
This is a direct quote from someone who is speaking of the Buddha and what he taught.
At the time the Blessed Buddha was at Uruvela, on the shores of the river Niranjana, as he rested under the Bodhi tree of wisdom after he had become Sambuddha, at the end of the 7th day, having his mind fixed on the chain of causation, he spake thus: From ignorance spring the sankharas of threefold nature, productions of body, speech, and thought. From the sankharas springs consciousness. From consciousness springs name and form. From this spring the 6 regions of the 6 senses, the 7th being the property of only the enlightened. 6 senses, that's cool. And the 7th being the property only of the enlightened.
Yes.
Wow.
And remember, we're only in the 5th root race of the 4th round in our progress through humanity. We have 5 senses that we recognize. There is a 6th one, and there is a 7th one, but only the enlightened have that 7th one.
From these springs contact from this sensation. From this springs thirst or desire, kama, which is desire, tanha. From thirst, attachment, existence, birth, old age, and death, grief, lamentation, suffering, dejection, and despair. Again, by the destruction of ignorance, the sankharas are destroyed, and their consciousness, name and form, the six regions, contact, sensation, thirst, attachment, which is also selfishness, existence, birth, old age, death, grief, lamentation, suffering, dejection, and despair, are destroyed. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. Knowing this, the Blessed One uttered this solemn utterance. When the real nature of things becomes clear to the meditating bhikshu, then all his doubts fade away, since he has learned what is that nature and what is its cause. From ignorance spring all the evils. From knowledge comes the cessation of this mass of misery, and then the meditating Brahmana stands, dispelling the hosts of Mara like the sun that illuminates the sky.
So this is what the Buddha said, and some preface to it by one of his followers at the time he was living about the essence of his teaching. This KH put in here for that very reason. It's a succinct summary of what the Buddha taught. And then KH made one final note, and that's the end of this letter.
Meditation here means the superhuman, not supernatural qualities, or arhatship, which is like adeptship, in its highest of spiritual powers.
Now, superhuman, we can have superhumans. Mahatmas are superhuman. They're above the human realm of understanding because they've reached another level of understanding. Supernatural can't exist because everything is nature. All right, so that's it, the famous God letter. But boy, is it chock full of information and tips for how we can better our lives, how we can eliminate and mitigate suffering. There's a lot to understand, and that's the entire purpose of all of this series, to learn how to become these Mahatmas who can help suffering humanity, to bless and save the world. You can only save yourself. You cannot save someone else, but you can set the example. They can see your life and see the difference that you have made if you have figured out how to eliminate suffering in your own life. And then you can tell them, I know this because I did it myself. Mm-hmm. You too can do it by following the same pathway. Yours will be different, but you will end up at the same location, which is samadhi or nirvana at the end of all of your series of lives, where everything is one, everything is perfectly calm, nothing out of sync with nature. But it's a long, long path. You may as well start somewhere. The longest journey starts with a single step. The longer we put it off, the longer we suffer. It's just the way it is. Some people feel entitled to their suffering and get addicted to it even. Remember this, whatever you suffer, other people suffer. Your family members, your friends, your coworkers, your children, everyone around you is affected by that. So if you have hatred toward yourself and beat yourself up over things, you're inflicting that energy on others. Is that what you really want to do? Think about it very carefully. If you can only meditate or calm down your mind for 5 minutes, do that twice a day, at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. Even 5 minutes will make a difference. Recite affirmations that help you to stay focused. And during the day, remind yourself of the affirmations that you need to repeat. Do simple things, and then you will be able to do greater things. All right. I think we've given them enough to chew on for one session here. 2 or 3 sessions, maybe. Yeah, all good stuff, all useful and life-changing. All right. We will see you next time in our session number 53. And we're going to have a surprise. After an absence, we're going to hear from Moria again.
Nice.
All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for following along.